Asma. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So great to see everybody chatting and having a good time. Okay, so I'm really happy to welcome, I'm just going to barrel through here because I'm a little behind schedule. Hello, Zoomers. Sound okay for you guys? Yes? Thumbs up? Okay, I'm just going to introduce Stephen Ross Smith. Stephen Ross Smith, Banff Poet Laureate from 2019 to 2021, loves music and is fascinated by moss. I'm with you there. His work often juxtaposes disparate threads, as in 14 published books, including his poetic series Fluttertongue. His newest book is Glimmer, Short Fictions from Radiant Press. He lives in Victoria, BC. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you all for your attention. As writers and artists, we all have people whose work has influenced or inspired ours. This is a selection from my suite of poems in progress called Some Heroes. René Magritte. Pipe stem pretend his wit, I bit, grinned his grids and greenly apple face, his floating hat, sleights of brush and eye, split attention slips that plume, twine, twin, feather flesh or mirrored peekaboo, nothing meager in his staged degrees. Trick, stick, hide and seek, beat, skip, beat, scene seams, the scenes reveal. Tip my bowler to his rainy rain, top-coated men, what's up or down, back or forth, what's what in his grilled business, his put-on facade. Time steams, air-tracked from the hearth at 17 to 1 o'clock, faces a dove, cages a rocky castled egg, swaddles the blinded lovers. I do not smoke, but tongue his unpipe and write this unpoem, un pomme pour feints and feats, la main magique, Magritte. Raoul Hausmann. An 8-sided hat grab, Raoul Hausmann's flipsy syllables forswear an ounce of caution, shamble a chatty alingual scat gab. Perium, pernurn. Purnod, perhaps. Aromatic anise, unparanoid noodle needle wheedle anoints a pointy angled tango's inexhaustible fire. Passion's parsed persistence, desire snap turns in the dance. Hausmann's word flip optomirror re-articulates. Seta, lucitra, rorum, otpo, pilf, draw, sna, soa. The language of the future. Eretuf et fo egonial et. A freestyle tongue toccata, a staccato love note to tomorrow. Robert Croce. Almost always gold. Larks in a lingering vein, clever confusions to undermine the expected. Who is serious in a hot spring? Who dances in a creek in a bad land? The received, eroded, reimagined. An invitation roared. A dare. Can you innovate? Distill a new precipitate? Who is R.K.? Writer or written? Rita? What meter maid arcade displaces teachings and treacheries, stammers, hammers. Tall Taylor makes you think again, think it over. What's a story? What's a poem? All over again. gives me a break by rule breaking, a convention on convention, a crash course, a crash, a robbery, R-I-P-K. B.P. Nickel. In a flicker of time, too hard to measure, his measure of bold and tender, chucked into lines, one puff at a. The way it rails, trailed to many lives and held hours, chance, the generous inchoations, family lines, babbles, verbals, chiseled language, slivers, shards, swirls, short ends and longs, held lines crossing continents, consonants, voyages and vowels, fricative frontiers. Now I come to the bleeding, breathing home vein, vessel to carry language spears, spirited transmissions to all he knew, a sparked heart, a flicker, still glowing. Kurt Schwitters. A blitz of Schwitters' wit, bitte, scavenged bits, scraps, and pieces, salvaged the rebound savings bank of time. Mertz mode rucked in a funky room, chunks assembled, piled on against sense, planked, shaped, plated, splayed, echoed, throaty murmur, a manner of speaking, tongue-thrummed mumble reconstruction, blurt chitter nonsense consonants, clown-faced vowels stürming and distilling, sounding a stylin's distillation, sonorous sonata. His life, a wacky dada doodle, dawdle, random tongue sliding, slopes and slats, carbon cast-offs, reclaimed deficits, contrivance and construct, postures, poems dangled as ballast, slung, hung, and sung in the land of raw debris. Fred Waugh. Rocking through wet forest, wind wanderer, a bit drunk, I turned, bleared eyes, toes to the coast. All this walking, shh, shh, scree, scritch, script, far as can tread, be read. So far, it opens up. Ah, space to limb into. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Stephen. What a great set of poems to read to a group of poets. Amazing. And I want to bring to your attention, Stephen has some really beautiful and unique chapbooks and books on the table there. So check them out after the show. Okay, so I'm really excited to introduce our featured reader of the evening, Brendan McLeod. Brendan is a writer, theater creator, and musician. He's the author of a poetry collection, Friends Without Bodies, a novel, The Convictions of Leonard McKinley, and 5 theater shows. His music group, the Fugitives, has been nominated for a JUNO as well as multiple Canadian Folk Music and Western Canada Music Awards, including Best Roots Group, Best Songwriter, and Best Vocal Group. He was the Poet of Honor at the 2012 Canadian Festival of Spoken Word and the 2015 Victoria Spoken Word Festival. And I always like to find a little interview, and I found a really tiny micro interview with Poetry and Voice, where they asked Brendan what he thinks the poet's job, quote unquote, is. And he said, which I thought was very concise and accurate, tell the truth with vivid language. So I'm looking forward to hearing some vivid truths right about now. Why not, Brendan?
Thanks. I do not remember saying that. I must have had a lot of coffee when I said that. Like, yeah, tell the truth with vivid language. Yeah, well, that's a good answer. Hi, internet. Do you like I wore my dirty? Yeah, so I do a kid show called Holy Guacamole, where I introduce figurative language through poetry to kindergarten to grade 5, and this is the shirt I wear, and thought it would be appropriate. It's the same demographic, pretty much. Same age group. So yeah, thanks. I packed it accidentally. I just wear black, nothing but black t-shirts. I thought it was a normal black t-shirt, and my partner was sleeping. I was trying not to wake her up as I packed, and I put this one on by accident. And so anyways, here we go. It's really nice to be back in Victoria. I went to undergrad here and lived in Vancouver for 12 years. So I have amazing poetic memories of Victoria. My first class I ever did in university was Philosophy 100. I walked in and the teacher was Jan Zwicky. So yeah, that blew my mind a little bit. Yeah, so I ended up doing my master's thesis on her, and I think specializing in philosophy, I think because of her, and never made any money, so I blame that also squarely on her. It is certainly nice to be back and remember those kind of things. This book is, I'm just going to read from Friends Without Bodies tonight. This is a book about the poetry books, my only poetry collection. It's about the pandemic. I wrote it during the course of the pandemic, started publishing it with Right Bloody North online during the pandemic, and then not that the pandemic is over, after lockdown ended, started kind of editing them with a really great editor named Alessandra Nacarado into the book. So it's weird now to frame it, right? Because we have to remember these things. Like we were just talking that like sports ended, remember? Like the NBA just canceled, and so did the NHL and all of these things. And so I like to read this one because it reminds us of what was happening. So this is called Coping Mechanisms, and when sports quit, there was the sportscasters were out of work, like most people, and so there's a sportscaster in Britain who didn't have any soccer left to commentate on. So you know this, the dogs, right? Oh, I know, it was hilarious. Yeah, he would just comment on dogs like fighting for bones in the park. He'd be like, "Oh, Lucy's coming in around. Oh, and Brutus with the." And by like the 9th day of lockdown, I was like, this is pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm having a good time right now. So he makes a little cameo in this poem called Coping Mechanisms. Someone steals a Van Gogh from a museum in the Netherlands, and I think that's an interesting way to cope. A woman golfs in a baseball diamond. A sportscaster documents his dogs fighting for bones. Ray and Justin sew masks. Lara gardens her ass off via grow lights in the guest room. Blanche turns to pizza dough. Jeremy makes beats. Marcello works through his collection of hotel shampoos to pretend he's traveling. Some posit will come out of this: chess champions, master painters, chefs who raise bread like Lazarus. But when the normal things present themselves again, beer at the bar, sports on the tube, families, I imagine our interest in knitting will wear off pretty quick. Not that we're fickle, just that we've been right all along. At the end of the day, these beautiful improvisations, the hobbies we've uncovered spelunking the caves of our minds, how can that possibly measure up to the miracle of sitting in a restaurant with friends? I was on one of those Vancouver to Toronto planes when the mask mandate lifted. The mask mandate on planes lifted on a Saturday, and I was on the flight leaving from Toronto, and at It was landing in Vancouver, and at midnight, he was an overnight flight, and at midnight Eastern, the pilot actually came on the plane and said, "Good news, you can all take off your masks now," which I thought was a little bit like, why would you go out of your way to announce this? And also with good news. And then to my like shock, everyone took off their masks. The stewards and flight attendants took off their masks. It was like candy strippers down the aisle. It was just this very surreal thing. And the idea that all of these hundreds of people could trust science so much that they would go up 38,000 feet in a plane and then also not trust science enough to just throw their masks off at a randomly determined time by the government. It just made me be like, that is humanity in a nutshell. So this is kind of talking about those kind of things, or some of the, it's called Other Ways of Getting Outside. Once back in the world before, when 3 people on the street were just 3 people on the street, I told my doctor my OCD was so bad I wanted to kill myself. She was unperturbed, though she grew indignant when I admitted to drinking 20 drinks a week. She didn't see the correlation, like drinking wasn't just one of the many drain pipes I'd shimmy to escape the room of my mind and prance the fields of oblivion. When people joke about the liquor store being essential, I think of the echo chamber of my living room without Prozac and remember, a virus is just one of a billion ways to die. If we love science, we must also love how it's proven shame to be ineffective as a social deterrent. If we trust statistics, we must acknowledge the escalation of domestic abuse in a pandemic. If we believe in social distance, the homeless shouldn't be packed into makeshift shelters to save the reputations of empty hotels. We can stay home and have compassion for the infinite reasons others might not. If we don't like that, we should have fixed the world before it broke. Oh yeah, you can clap, it's okay. Or give me that half-ass clap, that's great. This isn't just although it is a lot of me railing against the government in this book, but it's also a love story. I met my current partner at the very beginning of the pandemic. We were introduced through friends, and we were like, okay, this is a bit of a pickle. Like our first date was like, and then lockdown happened. So we were like, I don't know how this works. So anyways, we moved in together rather quickly because there was nothing else to do. So we'll jump ahead to like the third wave now. And this is just me running out of ideas for poems. So this is called Things My Partner Said Today. Whatever gets you through a quarantine. I'm worried about the ice trays not coming. What's nerdy, therefore my preference, is if we alphabetize the bookshelf. You could just put a dish towel down. My parents have a Globe and Mail subscription. Oh, Mr. Laissez-faire is a bit hesitant. I must have one of the longest necks in North America. Is there a place called Hamilton in South Africa? I feel a bit loony. I'm puttering. I'm trying not to kill a pedestrian. The whole day is gone. Well, I guess that's good. Are you making fun of me? There is a solution. Make me a cocktail in a pretty glass. Tell me you love me.
No.
It's none of your business. Tell my girlfriend I love her when I want to tell her. Of course I did, yes. Someone keeps telling me. I spent the lockdown in Niagara-on-the-Lake, which is a very small town outside of Toronto, because we had a bigger house there. And I don't know, I can't remember all of BC's fluctuations about this, but you might recall that Ontario did, which I don't think anyone else did, was they took the very strange step to ban camping and playgrounds for a minute. And so they were trying to get people to stop gathering, but it was an insane, like, so anyways, there's a lot of government mistakes, but I've never seen people get so mad when they banned playgrounds. Like this was, people were upset. So they reversed it, but they in like 24 hours. And so they yellow taped, I lived across the park and they caution taped this playground, which was like really surreal and apocalyptic. But anyways, when it changed on Twitter and they were like, just kidding, the government reverses that mandate, like Otherwise, I would say serene, middle-aged families with parents like mothers and fathers went across and they just ripped, like shredded its caution tape off of the playground, like put it in there like Jaws and just like, it was a very carnal kind of deliverance. And so this is a poem I wrote about the government's ideas at the time, and it's called Nature's Secret. Trudge your canoe over the quartzsite, set out along the water. As the wind skitters the birch, bass skirting your bow as it drives through the blue, raise your face to the towering sky and hear the broadleaf forest sing of paid sick leave. Roll to shore. In the mystery of night, the moon over the glass black lake imparts an effective vaccine campaign that targets marginalized communities. The black-capped chickadee heralds the morning with a cry for safe working conditions. The knotted bodies of shagbark hickory whisper for a reduction in essential businesses. The black bear believes in HVAC for our schools. All answers under the sky are revealed here. Why else would the government ban camping? The osprey descents, the wolves riot, the beavers Morse code thwacks out solutions to long-term care. Put your ear to the luxuriant crop of moss at the base of the pine and know the work of the poor is valued above their lives. They'll die in hallways, behind windows looking out at the street. I would be remiss to do this set and not talk about aliens. I'm doing a lot of research on just the future. I guess my new album and new show are all centered on the climate crisis. And it is not a good time reading about the climate crisis nonstop. I mean, I'm in Victoria. I don't need to preach to the crowd. I'm sure everybody reads about the climate crisis. But have you read The Uninhabitable Earth? First 4 chapters are heat death, drowning, hunger, and fire. I was like, this is a good time, isn't it? This is a good. I like the things that people come up with to, kind of not have responsibility. So I was reading about this biosocial engineer who's like, humans who are shorter consume less carbon than humans are taller. So if we just genetically modified every human in the future to be half the size. And I was like, you could eat less meat. And he's like, nope, we'll cut all humanity in half. We will need new furniture, but otherwise the problem is solved. So the same guy, he wants to give us all cat eyes so that we can use less lighting. And again, I was like, this is not the first thing. So I could fly a little less, but then a cat walks by and he's like, ha, eureka, I've got it. But one thing I have been enjoying is the future, or just now, is reading about UFOs. And if you're not up on UFOs or what they're currently calling UAPs, I highly recommend looking into it. It's amazing. It's very mainstream now. Marco Rubio, very socially conservative senator last week. Would never quote him in my life, but he ran for president. I'm just trying to say he's a mainstream person, wrote on Twitter last week. He was like, there are multiple UAPs that we don't understand flying over our airspace on a regular basis. We need to know what that is. And so to come from just a normative person, like Congress is getting briefed about UAPs all the time now. Anyways, I'll stop because it gets nerdy, but I recommend it. So this is about when I first got into that black hole or rabbit hole in the middle of the pandemic, which again is not a great time to get into UFOs. It's called Not Alone. I've reached the state of the pandemic where I've started to believe in UFOs. You're thinking, ha ha, idiot, but you're not up on the latest. It's not nut jobs with frayed hair anymore. It's State Department officials, Harvard astrophysicists, Navy commanders with 18 years of experience. Now even the guy who reportedly worked on alien spacecraft just off Area 51 seems legit. Don't blame me. The Pentagon released videos. It was front page of the New York Times. I'm concerned it's not catching hold. Visitors from space, we're not alone, etc. It's rare, worrisome territory for the world to have bludgeoned us to the point we can't muster the gift of curiosity. In May, up in the Arctic, they found ghost particles that passed through matter. And it didn't make a blip because Trump was high on hydroxychloroquine. I sent friends videos of Mars in 4K, like no biggie, just an alien planet in high definition that elicited few to no emoticons. People are scared of being pushed over the brink. I came back from a run after one too many podcasts about little green dudes, and I told Julia to reel me in, but her disposition seemed to be, why not? We sat down to watch the documentaries, and it was a wonder, after all this time of play acting being alive, to feel her spine tighten as we learned of aliens living amongst us since the dawn of time. Think of all the amazing shit we'll never learn if we blow ourselves up like idiots, she surmised, driving home the point. What the universe holds is nothing to be afraid of compared to the torpor of curiosity, our lives reduced to the half-hearted fiction of the known. Right? Kind of end on my last couple here. This is this is a sad poem, but I would start to think of it as an uplifting poem. I mentioned that I have like pretty bad OCD, and so one of the biggest regrets of my life is not telling my parents for such a long portion of my life, because you're trying to do a nice thing and just protect them from the fact that you're troubled, but then you end up lying about stupid things. Like, I wasn't the psychologist, I was curling. Like, you just end up making up bad lies. And that distances you from your parents. And so when I finally told my parents, I felt so much better and so much closer to them. And it's a regret that I didn't do that sooner. And so this poem is kind of in line with that. It's just the idea that even though you're medicated and you're doing all you can and you're really loved, that some days, like mental health it's a rough go for you. And so this poem kind of speaks to that, and it's called Day 102. The morning could not have gone better. We walked to the shimmering lake, drank coffee under a tree, my hand on her leg, her hand on my back, then walked home and swept the porch of wisps of grass and sand. I hate to be reckless with these gifts. There's nothing wrong with my body if you don't count my brain, and I know others have it harder. It's just tonight I know I'll sit and watch the sun and have to tell myself over and over as it pools into the horizon, it's actually the sun. I do this because I do not inhabit my body. I do not inhabit my body because my mind brims with intrusive thoughts, and acknowledging I'm alive makes me believe those thoughts will become real. The thoughts will not become real, though my mind assures me one can't be sure. The sun, the sun, the sun, I repeat, reminding myself it's there. I'm living the only moments I'll ever get. I hate that it's true, but sometimes it must be said to keep me going. My being in the world is too hard, the fatigue at times greater than family and friends. It rips my beautiful mornings from me and the evenings to come with nothing to complain of, drink in hand, sweet music on the stereo, the knowledge of everyone I love in the world, and the last of the sun on my face. Oh, the sun, the sun, the sun. Thanks so much. I'm going to do just one more. My book is available. It's called Friends Without Bodies. It's got a nice little cover here. And I'm also doing a workshop tomorrow morning on poetry and other things. I don't know. Is there room, or is just if anyone wants to come to the? So I don't know. You can talk. What's that?
You got a bunch coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if anyone else wants to come, I think you can come. I don't know. Anyways, we can talk about it. We don't need to take up the time. Internet, come on down to the person's house. It always freaks me out because you think that everything is just being said like here, and you can see everyone's face. You're like, I know where you live. It's all good. I can say things. And then you're like, I don't know what's going on. So this is called The Biggest Thing in the Universe. And it's just, during the pandemic, we thought a lot about having a child and stuff. And so this is about trying to come to terms with that. But of course, it's me. So it's in a little bit of a roundabout way. But here it is. And again, I apologize for missing parts of the open mic. It's usually my favorite part to just kind of swoop in and be able to get a vibe from the community. But it was nice to see what I saw. Biggest thing in the universe. I've never wanted a family. Everyone I knew getting married promised never to lose perspective, and then 2 months later, they'd lost all the weight in their face and they'd become obsessed with napkins. The apocalypse has made me rethink. Not only would it be easier to fight off looters as a team, my one friend trained her 10-year-old to bring her margaritas in bed. In bed, I asked. To spec, she cooed. And though I was skeptical, it's hard to make a good margarita, I was like, huh, kids. In Guinea, I heard story after story of bloodthirsty hippos stomping you to death for walking into their territory. But there was one lake where they'd grown up friendly, and you could canoe right up to them. And one morning, a guide took me out to their crop of rocks, and I watched them float and bat their soft, beady eyes at me, yawning now and again to reveal the vicious phenomenon of their mouths. It was like visiting New Orleans. It's like everyone says it's going to blow your mind. And you're like, yeah, how vibrant can a place be? Until you're waltzing the evening cobblestone, blinking back the wonder, blindsided by just how correct for once the world has turned out to be. There is no exaggerating a hippo up close. I yelled at the guide, please, get me out of here. My sudden thought being, what if one of these hippos is shitty? After all, everything alive has the chance at a bad father. Some past trauma convalescing on the shelf of its memory until this weird white guy starts shaking his oar, tumbling loose the past, firing up the blazing furnace of its brain, and that would be it. There's no bargaining with the hippopotamus. The guide paddled blithely away, chuckling, and my mind dipped back into my body just long enough to clock how special the moment had been. If the highlight of everyone's life is gazing at their child the first time, this is my stand-in. Because what's a family but the biggest thing in the universe? A thrashing animal that, even at peace, threatens to heave you around its mouth and break you. A phenomenon that fear might turn you from, but which you'll always call back. As I was the next morning, weaving down the broken dock and stepping again into that boat, forcing myself to believe it was worth the risk to take part in a miracle. Thanks so much. Thanks so much.